I am your host, Mike Kai, the pastor of Inspire Church and also the founder of the Inspire Collective. And I have with me today our guest, who's not a guest, he's a friend, and his name is Dr. Robi Sonderegger. Dr. Robi is a clinical psychologist from Australia, renowned for taking psychology from the front line to the home front. Every year, countless thousands around the world attend his live presentations, and tens of thousands have graduated from his trauma, rehabilitation, mental and emotional health, new habit formation, and parenting programs. I'm excited to have him. I think you're going to love this podcast. You're going to want to share it. You're going to want to subscribe, and you're going to want to send to other people as well. So please welcome with me to the podcast my great friend, Dr. Robi Sonderegger. Dr. Robi, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, so pumped to be with you.
Hey, we enjoyed our time with you this past weekend. Got to spend 4 days with you. Can't believe that you're already going home or back to the mainland tomorrow.
Yeah, I know. I feel like every conversation we have should be a podcast. It's
I know.
like, where was the recording throughout the week? We've had
Exactly.
so many great conversations, and looking forward to doing it again right now.
Yeah, I love it. Every time we talk, honestly, we're probably being recorded. We don't even know it with our iPhones.
Big brother.
Big Brother's watching us, but it's so good to have you. And thank you so much for being here. If most people don't know this, we've been friends for probably about the last 4 years. We've spoken at our men's conferences. I've seen you speak at huge stages all over the world. But what I count a privilege is that you're a personal friend.
Yeah, and I think the last 4 days, we talk about the last 4 years, but the last 4 days,
Yeah.
I think our hearts have been grafted to one another in a way like never before.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful for that. So
Thankful.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So one of the reasons why we've even forged an even greater friendship was because you've shared with our people on some of your great platforms on mental health. But then even on a personal level, I had to call you
Yeah.
a couple times.
Yeah,
And probably one of them was like sleep.
it happens.
Yeah. And the second one was like, I asked you, I said, Dr. Robi, I don't know what it is, but I had COVID. And I started talking myself out of all of these great plans that I had for the year. And I said, do you think I might have COVID brain? Is that a real thing? Tell them what you told me.
Yeah, absolutely. We can have this mental fog that lingers following COVID for a number of weeks where you just can't think straight. You feel like your energy has been depleted, and it's not just physical energy, it's mental and emotional energy, that you just don't have that same luster for life or the vision that you would otherwise have had or prior to getting COVID. It's like it's just kind of seeped out the window. But the good news is this too shall pass. And so we can just embark upon a step-by-step journey towards recovery. And just like your body gets restored, so does your mind and your heart.
Well, it definitely did help tremendously knowing that this is a common occurrence. Everybody gets it. Most people get it whenever they go through whatever COVID, blah, blah, blah that we've got. And so definitely come out of it. I don't know if you see any lingering traces. Please let me know offline. But it's good to have you. So Dr. Robi, I wanted to ask you, and what is the difference that have you noticed a difference with people and their brain health prior to the pandemic, and then in the last 2 years of shutdowns, masks, isolation, not coming to church, staying at home, not being a part of the body of Christ? What's the differences that you've seen?
When I look at the enemy's tactics for our world, fear and shame are the two, flagship hallmarks, the fingerprints of the enemy, so to speak. And so we've seen no shortage of shaming over the last couple of years,
Right.
Which position you might have or which idea or thought or belief system. But more than anything is fear has escalated like a wildfire. And even though people might deny, it's like, I'm not afraid of anything. Well, in actual fact, maybe you're more afraid than what you realize, because there's two sides of this coin. When we look at COVID and we look at I'm going to get COVID. I know this is terrible, and I should, what can I do? I'll get vaccinated, and then there'll be the other side of I'm not getting vaccinated. Those things are terrible, and so both are driven by fear, and so we have even in churches, people coming to pastors, unless you mandate vaccines, then I'm not coming to church anymore, and then the flip side, if you mandate vaccines, I'm not coming to church, but both are driven by fear,
Right?
And so what's going on? Why did we all of a sudden become so afraid? And get this, you'll love this. The CDC just recently published or endorsed an article that had like 20 different authors. It was the result of more than a year's worth of data. So up until now, it's been largely speculation. What is this thing? What's going on? How? But now we've got a year's worth of data from nearly 5 million patients, 4.8 million patients.
Wow.
That is derived from 800 different hospitals throughout the United States. Looking at, okay, so what are we actually contending with? And sure enough, there was a large percentage, it was 0.05, well, actually not that large, who got admitted to the ICU if they got COVID, and 0.01% die, in keeping with the statistic that 99.9% of people who get COVID survive it. But then they started asking the question,
wow,
okay, so why did the people who died, why didn't they survive? What was it? What were the risk factors? And so these days we're all familiar with, preconditions, comorbidities.
Right.
And so they looked at, well, what conditions present the greatest vulnerability? And so they identified the top 10 comorbidities or preconditions that may be linked or correspond or correlate highest with death.
Yeah.
And the list might surprise you. So, for example, respiratory illness or asthma was not on that list. The top number one, of course, was obesity. Most people are familiar with that these days. Number 3 was diabetes with complications, so not just normal diabetes.
Yep.
But it was the number 2 that took the entire scientific community by surprise. Have a guess what the second leading cause of death for COVID is?
I don't know. Tell me.
Anxiety.
Anxiety.
An anxiety disorder, a diagnosed anxiety disorder. And everyone's like, sorry, what? That leads to death? Potentially taking a new spin on the whole idea that fear might just be the real virus.
Wow.
It's a whole other, we have to think about this in a different way. So, of course, they were starting to, well, is it because of the medications that people are taking for their anxiety? Does that create a physiological vulnerability? Or is this something that's pre-existing like for 10 years? So they did a little bit of, deeper analysis and discovered that the majority of people had been diagnosed within the last 18 months with an anxiety disorder. So this fear of this virus is so detrimental to not just a person's mental health, but now quite literally their physical health as well. So we got to contend with fear. It's a real killer.
Oh, yeah, it's a huge killer. And especially in church where we can't preach about fear. I mean, we don't want to preach about fear. We want to preach about faith. And I think that's the thing that I've been focusing on maybe the last year and a half to almost probably 2 years. Like we're all going, we're all in this together. We're gonna be okay. We're gonna get through this. Quoting the right scriptures, and believe me, I believe all that. But at the end of the day, I think what is the biggest thing that has turned into an industry, an actual industry.
Oh yeah,
a money-making industry is fear.
Yeah, fear and sex. Sex sells, so does fear.
Yeah.
Fear is a selling point. It turns head and we're like, we go into hyper alert and we pay attention.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I look at all of the TV ads in America, really in Hawaii, just focusing a lot on what ads I see or what's being presented by the news media. It's almost like people are getting paid. The advertising agencies seem to get paid based upon how do we continue to perpetuate fear in people, to continue to make money off of the tests, make money off of doctor visits. All of that is turned into a massive industry.
Yeah, and it's nothing new. It's been around for ages. Forever and a day, even here in the United States, we've known that pharmaceutical advertisements are best placed right after the late evening news. And so you watch the news and you see how catastrophic the world looks and oh no, and everything's falling apart and I feel anxious. And then comes the ad. If you're feeling anxious, here is...
No kidding. That's why I stopped watching the news.
Yeah.
I haven't even watched the news. I watch the newspaper to see what kind of lies they're going to put out there so I know what play they're running. And maybe I've gone a little bit too far, but if you guys know me by now and you've been watching this podcast, you know that I'm always looking for the truth, because the truth will set you free.
Good.
So, Dr. Robi, can you tell us about what are the psychological effects that you know of children in schools wearing masks and sitting further away than ever before from their classmates?
welcome to the world in which we live, that whatever I say next is going to be, divisive one way or the other. Someone's going to get offended. So let me just go ahead and
That's
offend
okay.
you.
Yeah.
The challenge that we're living in today is that there seems to be an agenda for almost every political move, under the guise of it's for your benefit or for your health or for your, whatever it might be. But when I look at the controls that are placed on people and personal autonomy and personal responsibility is removed from the equation,
Yeah.
anytime that happens, I've got alarm bells going off. So irrespective of whether or not we can dig down and go, now, let's have a look at masks. What does the research actually say on masks? Oh, they don't seem to work unless it's a type 2 grade surgical mask used in, by a medical practitioner in surgery.
Yeah.
These masks that we wear on our face are practically useless.
Yeah.
Research has overwhelmingly demonstrated. So irrespective if we're looking at that.
So I liken it to a big fish in net trying to capture plankton.
Yeah.
It's going to go right through. It's not even helping.
Right.
It's not even helping.
So even though we all know that, well, if we're wearing a mask, psychologically, it might help us to be a little bit more cautious. Well, maybe that's true. And maybe there's merit in that. But psychologically, what is the effect, especially the damage that may be done in children who are unable to engage facial recognition and be able to see expression and engage in understanding and empathy, because the facial expressions that we see on other people's faces actually ignite our brains. Let me explain. So we've got pockets of neurons or brain cells that are called mirror neurons.
Yeah.
So that when I see the expression on your face, my mirror neurons light up as though I am experiencing that same expression or that same emotion. This is how empathy develops. So if I'm going to have compassion and empathy for another fellow human being, I need to be able to see their face.
Yeah.
If you cover your face and I can't see it, my mirror neurons can't light up, and my empathy and my compassion for you is disabled.
Wow. So I think that's why it's important. I love it when someone actually is talking to me and they actually take off their mask and I can see their whole face, because now I felt like all of a sudden we've connected as human beings. Once you removed your mask, even if you put it back on later on, we've connected as a human being. And I think you're absolutely right. I was on a flight coming home from wherever I was, and I had the mask on and I was sleeping. And I couldn't sleep with the mask on. I guess subconsciously I removed my mask, or I put it below my nose. And the poor flight attendant had to come and tell Lisa to nudge me to put my mask on. And I guess I did. I put it on, but I took it off again because I just want to sleep. I can't sleep with this thing over my nose. It's a 10-hour flight. And so it happened again. And this time, the guy kind of yelled at me. And I just made these hand signals. Yeah, got it. That get out of my face. You know what I'm saying? I was irritated. And the guy came over and he apologized to me after. He said, I apologize. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I was like, you know what? You probably get this all the time. You probably have to wear this 2 hours before you actually get into the plane, and you're going to wear it 30 minutes after everybody leaves, and you're going to put it on in the shuttle, and you're finally going to take it off in the hotel room. So I understand, and I actually feel more sorry for you than I do for myself. So please forgive me. Because I would imagine that someone who has to wear it for 13 hours. If I'm going to wear it for 13 hours, you're going to wear it for 10 hours. I don't know what that has to do with any of the questions that we've been talking about, but I just wanted to share my personal experience on a plane.
I think we've all got experiences like that. It's an interesting day and age in which we live, and the political divide is growing like lightning speed. I've never seen anything like it, and so whether or not you believe masks are good or bad, largely falls down now political lines. It's got nothing to do with physical health.
Yeah, it's turned that way. It's turned that way. If you have a little more of a conservative mindset, you're more apt not to wear the mask.
Yeah, freedom is your focus, and personal responsibility and autonomy. And if I run the risk and I get COVID, this, that, and the other.
I get COVID.
And I get COVID. And of course, the flip side will be the other side. Well, no, it's not just you getting COVID, it's you giving COVID. And so you put your mask back on, but okay, well.
I want to ask you another question, but it really doesn't have anything to do with COVID. People say, like, I just put on my COVID-20. I got a COVID-20. And when you think about food, what would be the most dangerous foods to eat for our brain?
Oh, such a great question.
Yeah.
Like we could spend an entire, series of podcasts just on this theme alone. But
Right.
but if I was to condense it down into the, the two or three nasties, sugar is probably number one. Fat is probably number two. Not all fats, but the right the wrong, should I say, kinds of
What about
fat.
ribeye steak fat? Is that good or not good?
Well, it could be good.
What if I made it really crispy?
There's
What if I chewed it an extra longer? Like I just chewed the cud on that thing until I got everything out of it, and then I spit out the rest. What?
Well, there's a certain acid found in red meat in particular that contributes to weight loss in men. So especially around the midriff, around the waistline. So
right.
Come on, bring it on, cook that steak. but look, really, we're living in
sugar?
Sugar and fat. So they're the real cause. We're living in a day and age of everything is fat free. So we say 93% fat free. So it sounds healthy, but actually it's 7% fat. But if you remove the fat from food, will you also remove the flavor? And so the fat that's why we have the fat on the ribeye. It makes the ribeye taste.
We like the marble in the meat.
That's right.
Right.
But if you remove the fat, then you remove the flavor. And so what do? Well, we have to replace the flavor. How do we replace it? With sugar. And so we put sugar in. But now when sugar is metabolized, what happens? It turns itself into fat. So it's not fat-free, it's fat yet to be.
Oh.
And so these two things can evaporate from our brain, important neurotransmitters, chemicals like norepinephrine, dopamine, serotonin that are essential for our well-being. Now, if you don't have these well-being chemicals, then you cannot be very well. But more importantly is that certain types of fat, and in particular hydrogenated and trans fats, they block the dopamine receptor. They erode or decay the myelin sheath that's around the brain cell communication line, the railway tracks, if you will, and it stops the transmission. So that's why we call them neurotransmitters. These are chemicals that are being flown along the pipeline, communicating essential information. And if that is eroded away, then you can't pay attention. You'll have poor impulse control, leads to things like hyperactivity. And so I think, I must be overtired. I'll just reach for coffee. But coffee doesn't wake you back up or bring your frontal lobes back online. It just tricks your brain into not thinking anymore that you're tired. And so we're now on this chemical highway of trying to compensate and fix ourselves. But it was all because I chose to have certain things for breakfast, lunch, or dinner that have now resulted in brain fatigue.
Right. So would you say bread, carbs, does that contribute to the sugar side?
It depends what kind of bread and what kind of carbs. If we're eating, really good, healthy bread, it's fantastic. Complex carbohydrates, awesome because it's a slow burn. You got to think about it like putting logs on the fire. It's really great to put log on the fire because it's going to keep you warm for the next several hours. But if you just put straw on the fire, there'll be this rush of warmth and light. But 2.3 seconds later, the entire thing will be burned out. And so the same is true with sugar. When we're eating simple carbohydrates, which immediately turn themselves into sugar, we get this this rush of energy, and 2.3 seconds later, I've crashed. And so what do? I need more sugar.
Right. Okay, so about 7-8 years ago, I discovered that I was allergic to gluten. And it wasn't just by self-analysis. I actually went to a doctor and said, yeah, you have borderline celiac, you're allergic to gluten. And I really got bummed out. And I was at a conference and went down to the breakfast buffet, and I looked at everything and said, I can't have that pastry. No toast, that's strudel for you. No pancakes. I looked at all of this, no French toast. And I looked at that bacon, like that bacon doesn't, I don't know, can I have that bacon? I looked at everything, and I was really bummed because it was a major lifestyle change that I would have to make. But I know I made it for my brain more than I did for my waistline. You know what I'm saying? Of course, it's helped. I haven't packed on stuff, but I can tell you this. I started eating for my brain because I found myself, whenever I'd have a bagel before a meeting, I would be like in an hour or so, I wouldn't stand for stuff. People say, well, are you still eating gluten? Because it looks like you're still eating gluten. No. Like seriously, before, I couldn't stay awake. I needed a nap by 11, and it really messed up my brain. And so I realized I was getting brain fog from all of this, and I totally changed my diet. Maybe 95% I've changed my diet where I had a sandwich yesterday. You saw that, but I was okay.
Yeah.
Lisa made some cheese bread last night. I think I was okay. But I realized that all of the foods that I was eating, I wasn't eating anymore for, to bulk up or to get lean. I was eating for my brain, and everything else fell into place and actually started working better.
Wow. If you're struggling in certain areas and you do experience this brain fog or brain fatigue, one of a really good discipline to do is to engage in this old tradition called fasting. And what research has discovered just really in the last couple of decades is that when you fast, and when I say fast, I don't mean, I'm fasting coffee or I'm, fasting Instagram. No, I mean like nil by mouth, like old school, Old Testament, Day of Atonement style fasting. When you fast, your brain produces a protein called brain-derived neurotrophic factor. If you want to Google it later, just type in BDNF.
Okay.
Brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So let me unpack. It's a simple term. Brain-derived means this protein is derived in the brain. You don't get it from eating something. Neuro means brain cell or nerve cell, and trophic means growth. This particular protein contributes to the growth of brand new brain cells. We call this neurogenesis. Wow. In other words, when we were growing up, our parents always told us, don't take drugs or don't drink alcohol. It'll kill your brain cells. But no one ever told us we could grow new ones.
Wow.
And so what it does is it strengthens the existing healthy neural networks as well, brings clarity to your mind. And so when you are not just fasting, but fasting and problem solving or meditating or percolating on a particular idea or scripture or verse, just like it says in the Bible, if you engage this discipline, bing, amazing bright ideas come to mind, new release on life. It's like energizing your brain for the next season ahead. Fasting is a really healthy discipline.
So how many hours would you say that if you go on a true fast, you're just drinking water and you're not doing a Daniel, how many hours before you think that might start to kick in?
Well, I'm not sure. And look, we're living in a day and age of intermittent fasting, which is like fasting on light. And there's lots of great, benefits to be had from that as well. But the research that's been done is full-on old school 24-hour Day of Atonement style, so nil by mouth. So when they did research with rats, they literally starved them for a day. But the next day after the experiment was over, they would give the rats as much food as they would like to eat, and discovered that the rats would actually eat twice as much on the second day as they normally would on an average day. So in other words, this is not a reduction of calories. So over the course of 2 days, same amount of calories. So it's not about calories, it's about discipline.
Yeah.
Having 24 hours to be able to go, I'm going to humble myself before the Lord in the same way that it was in the Old Testament, old school style.
So even a 24-hour fast and just water. We'll do one, or even tea. Is that okay? Tea's okay? Well, whatever. But even, trying to cheat here.
Chewing gum, gum. Can we do gum?
Can I put something in my stomach to make me feel like I'm full? But does just 24-hour fasting?
24-hour fasting. So what they would do
from time to time.
Yeah, from time to time. They'd put rats in a cage with mazes and puzzles to solve, and they discovered that when rats are fasting, their brain is switched on so much better than what they would otherwise normally be.
I need to fast a little bit more often.
It's a good thing to do.
Yeah, I think so. That'd be great. So we talked about what's not good for the brain, fats and sugar. What would be great for the brain?
Look, it depends what you want to achieve.
So, John Bevere would say blueberries. John Bevere will grab a handful of blueberries and a handful of almonds, and he's good. He's good for the next 6 hours. He's good for the next 12 hours.
Every neuroscientist I know lives on blueberries. There's something about blueberries in the brain. There's definitely something in that.
Yeah.
But when we talk about mental health, all too often, what we're really talking about is emotional health.
Yeah.
That the brain fog or fatigue that we get is often, I just feel emotionally drained. I don't feel as though, so when you described yourself before, I've eaten gluten and then I don't stand for anything. And so there's that little bit of aggression that's come.
Jezebel. You're an Absalom.
So it's emotion, really.
Yeah.
So my question is, how do we actually stabilize our emotions? How do we eat in a way that actually, so it's a little bit like time management versus energy management, which is a bit of a sexy term thrown around these days. Oh, no, I don't do time management. I do energy management. Well, great. Do that for your brain as well.
Yeah.
Do emotional management so that you're feeling great, because when you're feeling great, you'll be thinking much better as well. And so one of the best foods you can eat to stabilize your mood is chicken.
Chicken.
Did somebody just say Chick-fil-A?
Chicken McNuggets?
Chicken McNuggets. Look, the idea of chicken is that it contains an amino acid called tryptophan, which, when digested, converts itself into serotonin. And serotonin is one of those three important neurotransmitters that we mentioned before. It regulates sleep, it regulates appetite, and it regulates mood. So if you're feeling a bit down and out, go for chicken.
Chicken. What about turkey?
Turkey, any poultry.
Yeah.
Poultry. Yeah.
Turkey. I find turkey at Thanksgiving will put me to sleep. Is that the baked beans? Is that the mac and cheese? Or is that really the turkey?
Serotonin. It regulates sleep. So if you're having sleeping trouble, have turkey or chicken or poultry before going to bed.
You said something a couple of times that we've been together that when I'm emotional, I'm less intelligent. Is that how you say it? How do you say it?
Yeah. So if we are unable to manage our emotions well, and we get worked up over something, well, the more emotional we get, the less intelligent we become.
I see that in myself sometimes.
Yeah, that's why we really need to be able to either have checks and balances in other people, like go to them and say, hey, I'm really emotional, I'm really upset, I'm really stressed about this thing. Can I just run this by you before I press send or whatever it might be? And or, hey, how do I actually manage my emotions well? And you can do it through food, but you can also do it through exercise and sleep, for that matter.
Yeah. So what would be the optimum meeting times that someone should have? Not between 9 and 11 a.m. What I mean is a length of period of time that you need meetings, and then I need a break. Like how many, 45 minutes is an hour and a half, and then you need a 10-minute break. What would you say would work for the workflow of people who are working really hard?
I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all model, but when we look at the brain and we see how the brain operates, every 12 to 15 minutes, the brain goes through a kind of like a falling away. I've lost interest. I've lost, unless it's really engaging, you've lost my attention. My brain's going to drift off. I'm going to be thinking about the other things I need to do later on today, or that meeting that I had with that person, or that nasty thing that person said. And, oh, sorry, what were we talking about? I've switched off. And so people who make movies understand this, so that every 12 minutes there has to be a change in scene, a new car chase, or something to grab our attention again. And so you can make a meeting go for 3 hours, so long as every 12 to 15 minutes there's a shift in the topic or a shift in dimension. We're standing up now, we're walking over here, there's a new location. So it doesn't matter how long the meeting goes for, but if you are having the same topic being discussed for more than 15 minutes, you will become unproductive in that discussion. Meetings should be as fast as humanly possible. Do
you take that into your preaching? Because you're a brilliant communicator. Do you work that in? Do you throw up a video, or do you just go from one side of the stage to the other side, or do you park yourself in front of a platform, plexiglass platform, and just stay to the left? What do you do? Or is it voices? Is it gestures? What do you do? All of the above. And you can do it just in emotion, so that you can take people to a wow factor where they're like, oh, that's amazing. And then take them to a sad factor where they're like, wow, that's really tragic. And then immediately to a laughing factor and go, hang on, whoa, I'm on an emotional roller coaster ride. This is, am I okay to be laughing right after I was sad? Yeah, because your brain is paying attention now. But laughter is the key. People learn best when they're having fun, even if it's a difficult topic. So we work around the world in trauma, in war zones, in natural disaster areas, like where the torture and trauma is, the most horrendous things that human beings can do to others. And yet, if you were to sit in on any one of our trauma rehabilitation training, the thing that you will be most surprised at is how much people are laughing. Because when we engage hearts and minds through a bit of fun, a little bit of laughter, we actually pay attention better. We learn better, and we'll apply the lessons that we learn in our lives with a greater deal of sincerity. So, Dr. Robi, a lot of people that are listening to this, they're leaders. They're in all kinds of industry, doing different things around the world, and even in Hawaii. But what are senior leaders and business owners or top-level executives? What do you notice is the common vulnerability that we might all have? Juggling too many balls and not understanding the difference in the balls in which we juggle.
This is actually I read a book not so long ago on a flight from where was I, Amsterdam to Zurich. So not a long flight, simple book. The book is called The One Thing. Have you ever read The One Thing?
No,
I got to say, I only got one thing out of the book. That's actually a good little book. But the one thing that I really took away from it was not even by the author themselves. That he was quoting somebody else. And it was basically that high-performance leaders are always juggling many balls. And so if you're a ministry leader, hey, you've got the staff meeting coming up, and then you've got the message that you're preparing, and then you've got the counsel, that person who's going through a marriage crisis over here, and then you've got your own family. There's lots of different balls that we're juggling.
Yep.
But ultra high performance leaders understand that not all balls are made from the same stuff, such that if you're juggling the ball called work and you accidentally drop it, well, the good news is the ball called work is made from rubber. It will bounce right back. Tomorrow there will be more work. There's no shortage of work. There's always more work. It'll always bounce back. But if you drop the ball called marriage or drop the ball called health, those are made from porcelain or glass.
Right.
And if that smashes, you can't get that back so easily. And so we have to really prioritize what matters.
Yeah.
Not just that I've got lots of different things that I've got on my to-do list to do today, but what's the one thing that is my priority that must be done, and everything else will then fall into line.
So yesterday we were talking about spinning plates, and we talked about that concept of I got a lot of plates that I'm spinning. I got the revival plate I'm spinning, got the marketplace, got church, which is the biggest plate, got family, bigger than that, got moves that we're making, deals that we're trying to do for the church, and property we're trying to acquire, services that we're starting in new locations, and all these plates. What is the best way to handle a plate so that the plate doesn't drop?
Get into the right position. So I call this the pouring position. I love the scripture that says, as we refresh others, we to ourselves will be refreshed. And so if you can, in your mind's eye, imagine a cup pouring liquid into another cup, well, it's at a particular angle. It's in a particular position. And in that particular position, there's only one position that works where a cup can pour into another and also be poured into at the same time. It's at a particular angle. It's the angle of between 65 and 85% on a tilt. And it's interesting that the liquid will only flow when it's between 65 and 85% full. And so we have to get ourselves into the right position. All too often, as leaders, we're like, I need the provision. If I could get the money to build this new building or, buy this new plot of land or, then we could do amazing things, but we've missed the point. Actually, no, I've got to get into the right position, because positioning precedes provision. And the reason why it precedes provision is because smack bang in the middle is where purpose lives. So if we're chasing after the money, well, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that whatever you're chasing will run from you. If you chase a child or chase a dog, they're like, ha, can't catch me, and they take off. So we've got to learn how to attract as opposed to chase after. And so I'm not going to chase after anything. I'm going to learn to pursue not just money, but what matters, and what matters is meaning, and meaning is purpose. So if I understand that this is the right position for me to get on my knees before God and ask God, what is the purpose behind this? Then whatever you need will now find you on the way and not in the way, because purpose precedes provision. It's part of a package. Positioning, purpose, provision. These are the mindset shifts that leaders really need to grasp.
Brilliant. I love it. I love that. Dr. Robi, when I think about our relationship with Jesus Christ, and I think about devotions in the morning, I find if I had a good devotion, if I read my Bible, if I paused for prayer, if I was silent, had my coffee, and I'm just sitting there, my day goes so much better than if I did not do it and I tried to squeeze it in during lunch.
Yeah.
Or tried to find a little coffee break and go on the side. Tell us what you think about why is it so critical, probably, to do it in the morning versus doing it throughout the day.
I love Jesus' model. He got up early in the morning, often before it was light, and went out and spent time with God. And when I think about my role as a doctor in clinical psychology, working with people, oftentimes I'll spend an hour with people, working through their issues, problem solving, trying to analyze what's the maintaining factor for this, what can we do to, create an intervention so that we can, go on a new track or a new way of thinking. And it's hard work to work through that hour. But when I look at Jesus' model, he never worked like that. He never spent an hour with people. He's like, oh, you need healing? Done. Eyes restored, leper cleansed. And I'm like, how did he
flip?
How did he get that power? He didn't spend an hour with people. He spent an hour with God.
Yeah.
He started out he was super energized in the spirit, so that now he can activate that when he comes with people with so much greater effectiveness and power, because he energized in the spirit.
I want to change directions just for a moment. Tell me about what would be the most effective, in your experience, the last 2 to 4 years, the most effective curriculum that you've launched or that you have available.
We've just produced a brand new suite of curriculums on the platform peoplecare.global, which is in particular for ministries, for Christian churches, schools, and organizations to roll out and serve their communities well. But of all of the different programs, probably our flagship program at the moment, the one that's the most hot property, is the GROW program. And GROW is understanding, okay, there are critical incidents in our life. The only qualification that we need to experience some kind of tragedy is simply to be born. In other words, no one is immune to this stuff. But when we get knocked down, well, what do? Well, if you go see a psychologist, they'll help you get picked up and be restored to your original starting position of neutral or zero. But our question is, well, how can you go beyond zero? How can you go not just from minus back to zero, but go into plus now, making true of that statement, that which doesn't kill you only makes you stronger? Like, could we actually do that? And research now has come along and said, yes. So we've been able to identify that there are some key hallmarks or characteristics and qualities that people can develop that facilitate post-traumatic, not stress, but post-traumatic growth. And so we can understand that, it's like the common saying, we all have to go through adversity university from time to time, and we learn lessons from it. But I don't want to just learn lessons. I want to understand that whatever I go through, I can grow through. I can actually be better off in the end than what I was before this tragedy or difficulty took place. My only question is, well, how do I do it? The GROW program takes you on that journey.
How do they find that?
Well, we made a series of observations working in war zones over the last 15 years that some people who've been traumatized will walk around with a limp for the rest of their life. Other people will make a recovery and get back on with their lives. But other people just accelerate and become amazing leaders and do amazing things. And so they don't just recover, they go from strength to strength. And we observe this in our own, communities as well. Oftentimes when we look back on the greatest growth periods of our life, it often was accompanied by tragedy. And in fact, if somebody has experienced a great tragedy, often they're thankful for it, like a drug addict who had a near-death experience when they had an overdose. And they go, yeah, I'm really grateful. Not grateful because I want to experience it again, or what I wish it on anybody else, but I recognize that was the catalyst, that was the turning point, that was the springboard. I went to rehab after that. I got the help that I needed, and I didn't just stop there. I went on to become a counselor, and now I'm helping other people with the drug and alcohol issues. How did I go into plus? It's incredibly exciting. So we were making this observation, but so was Professor Martin Seligman here in the United States, together with his colleagues, and recognizing, hang on, why is it that some people grow through their tragedy and others don't? What qualities or characteristics do they possess? And so they did research and articulated or identified. There was a whole string of them, but 5 in particular stand out head and shoulders above the rest.
What are they? Can't believe you got all this memorized. It's amazing.
The 5, in no particular order, start with hope. Holding on to hope that despite whatever situation or circumstance I'm in, I recognize that hope is not just something I have or don't have, but rather it's something I can cultivate. Sometimes people, when they're going through difficulties, they say, man, I've just got no hope. But when you ask them, hang on, what do you mean by that? Well, they'll clarify and say, well, I just kind of feel hopeless. But it should be noted that feeling hopeless is not the same as having no hope, because to have no hope means you're dead.
Right.
So as long as you've got breath in your lungs, you might have less of it, hope less, but it's a little bit like faith. We've all got a measure of hope. We've all got a measure of faith. And so what are you going to do with that hope? Cultivate it. Hope is simply the choice to believe that my tomorrow is going to be better than my today or my yesterday. And if you do hold on to the substance of things hoped for, corresponding with faith, like it says in Hebrews chapter 11, well, then we can engage step number 2, or characteristic number 2, which is believing in a God who actually cares. This isn't just believing in God, because sometimes, well-meaning Christians say, all you need to do is just believe in God and everything going to be okay.
Why do you use an American accent? Why don't you use an Aussie accent with that one?
That's a stereotype. We don't preach like y'all over here. But the thing is, look, even the devil believes in God, and it doesn't do him much good.
Right.
The key differentiating factor is that we believe that God actually cares about us. And even though we're going through difficulty and we might be tempted to ask the question, why? Why would you let this happen? Or what kind of God would allow this to take place? Which are the common questions that people, irrespective of whether or not they believe in God, they find themselves talking to him. They got questions for God.
Yeah.
And these are the most common. But a person who holds on to hope and believes in a God who cares, they don't ask why, they ask who. Who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above and beyond all that I can ask, think, or imagine? Oh, wait, it's you. I might not understand why this is happening, but if my heart is breaking, then your heart must be breaking also. Why? Because you care for me. Cast your cares on him.
Yeah.
And if you do, and if God really does care, it allows you to shift gears and go into step number 3, which is to take the spotlight off yourself and actually be grateful for what's transpired. Grateful that I'm allowed to go through this and learn the lessons, that there's a silver lining in this dark storm clouds, that, and in fact, understand that storms, when we have storms, and in fact, you'll love this, when we have storms in our lives, plants grow better from the rain from a thunderstorm than they do from a normal rain shower or from a sprinkler system. And that is because when the lightning strikes when clouds crash, it separates the nitrons in the air, which become infused with the raindrops and fall to the ground. And when they hit the dirt, they become infused with the ground and turn into nitrate, which is fertilizer.
Wow.
So cool that woven
That's
into
awesome.
the fabric of our universe are these principles that when we go through storms, we can actually grow through them better. And so let's be grateful. Let's be grateful that God is on our side and that we do have a hope for a future, that he is for us and not against us, so that we become thankful in all circumstances, not just in the good times. And
hope.
Hope.
Second is God cares.
God cares, belief.
And 3 is be
Gratitude.
grateful.
Exactly.
What's
And
the last 2?
4 is kindness.
Kindness.
Where I get to take the spotlight off myself now and make a valuable investment in the life of somebody else, asking the question, what skills, assets, resources, opportunities do I have to really make a difference? And here's the thing. If I'm making a valuable contribution to the life of somebody else, well, value is the same as the term worth. Self-worth is the same as the term self-esteem. And self-esteem is the pathway to confidence, which brings us to the 5th and final characteristic, which is called courage. And so if I can take the spotlight off myself and shine it on somebody else and be a blessing to somebody else, I can have the courage to pick myself up from when I got knocked down, dust myself off, sit back enthroned to where God wants me to be, put on the kingdom mindset that God wants me to have instead of the victim mindset.
Yeah.
And now I have the opportunity to go back into the fray, go back into battle and fight for the good one more time.
Everybody, you've been listening to my good friend, Dr. Robi Sonderegger, clinical psychologist from Australia, but traveler all over the world, just ministering and helping in different platforms and churches and whatnot. He is the husband to Nolene and the father of 5 beautiful kids. And it's been a privilege and an honor to have you join us. Dr. Robi, before we leave the people, tell us about the People Care Global.
PeopleCare.global is an innovative platform basically designed to provide people care or pastoral care, how to empower people to help people better. We're living in a day and age where everyone wants to be a counselor, an advisor, but we're also living in a day and age where if you give advice to somebody and they actually take that advice, and it doesn't work out well, you might also be legally liable for that advice. So how can we equip and empower people and not be vulnerable to litigation? How can we truly have an evidence-based, research-driven, biblically centered approach to pastoral care that absolutely gets results, that we can measure those results so that it's not just some kind of like glorified healing ministry where we get some person out of a wheelchair and walk them across the stage and clap and cheer, and 3 weeks later that person's back in traction? No, what's the follow-up? Was the miracle sustainable? Like, where's the evidence and the results that we can truly testify? And so we've developed a whole suite of discipleship programs to empower churches not to be psychologists, but literally to put resources into the hands of people that will truly get results. And peoplecare.global, it's a digital platform. It's completely innovative in the world. It's in touch with the pulse of the times. It'll be a complete game changer, especially in the space of mental health.
So has it gone live already?
Yeah, just got launched at the tail end of 2021.
Okay.
Go check it out at www.peoplecare.global.
Yep.
And it's designed specifically for organizations, not individuals, so that individuals can go to the church or go to the school and work together with individuals who are trained in pastoral care, so that there can be accountability, assessment,